Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first technologically successful Facebook Live for the Healthy Dog Expo in over a week. It is awesome to be back to tech okay. I'm Dr. Lori Koger. I'm here today with my guest, Carolyn Bolduc from Bold by Nature, one of the familiar faces in Canadian raw feeding, but a new player moving into the US, and I'm grateful to say, a Healthy Dog Expo sponsor. Carolyn has been a raw feeder for about 20 years, so a long-time part of our community. Her background is in medical lab sciences, I believe, Caroline.
It is,
And
yes.
but her passion is the raw and natural pet food world. So welcome. Welcome. How are things in Canada?
Things are cold in Canada, but this year we haven't had as much snow, so it's been a kind of a strange weather year. But
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to spring coming in and getting
Yeah.
back to some nice weather up here.
Yeah. Yeah. We have not had a lot of snow either. And Janet, thank you. I can see your comments. So guys, comments are even working. This is a good day. So tell us more about what it's like to run a raw feeding company in Canada. A lot of us, as we talked about off camera, are inside scoopers and know a little bit about it. But what's it like behind the scenes?
Canada's funny. I've been doing this for 20 years. Bold started in 2005, and we were one of the first companies to really do commercial raw foods in Canada. Back in the day, there was only Instinct that was in Canada and a few little homegrown brands. And like a lot of our colleagues and other raw brands, we started this because of our love for dogs and doing research and better nutrition. But it's evolved a lot since 2005 in Canada. And we've now, we now have really great brands up here that do a great job. And a lot of them, there's more testing happening. But the biggest myth in that the American industry doesn't see in Canada is that there's no oversight of the raw pet food world in Canada. We don't have an FDA or a USDA that gives us guidelines. So it's really on the companies themselves to be honest and to be transparent, to do the right thing. So there's a lot of ones that are not really being
Mm-hmm.
like selling raw food out of the back of your car is
Yeah.
still something that happens here. I'm sure it happens in the US too.
Oh,
But then
yeah.
there's companies like ours that, we are HACCP certified, and, we have standards, and we only do human grade in Canada and the US. So it's definitely, we're starting to see a split
Mm-hmm.
where the real companies doing it properly are splitting off from the ones really doing it out of the back of their car. And that's something that I'm really trying to push with vets and other people is,
Yeah.
not all raw is created equal. You have to ask the questions of your manufacturer and make sure that you know what the questions are. So it's a very
Mm-hmm.
interesting world in Canada. In the US, you guys have a lot of regulations, which really makes the product definitely stricter. And if people do their research, they have a
Yeah.
lot more options than they have in Canada, I could say.
Yeah. And even that person selling it from the car may be doing it right, or they
Right.
may be doing it horribly. And the same exact statement can be made for a company with a manufacturing plant. Um,
Oh, 100%. The US with, the pet food is very regulated, but, you can still walk into a plant where even though it's okay for a human plant to do certain things, when you deal with raw food,
mhm.
the integrity of the product is so important. So you should never thaw your organ meat in a barrel of lukewarm water like they do sometimes in human food plant, because
Mhm.
human food plants, you cook it, right? So it's okay, but in
Right.
the raw you don't. So it's very important to follow the guidelines, but also look at like going above the guidelines to make the product safe. So, you know,
Mhm.
in our case, whether we manufacture in a Canadian plant or in the US plant, you know, the time that the product comes in, gets ground, gets manufactured is critical. So, you know, by the time it comes in and it's done, it's typically, you know, we're looking at an hour time frame instead of,
Yeah.
you know, days and days of tempering and thawing and stuff like that. So you have to look at the product, how it's going to be fed, and not just, well, you know, it's meat, right? So it's very
Right.
important to see that.
Right. Right. And you mentioned you have a California plant.
Mm.
So you moved into the US last year in 2023, right?
Right. Well, I've been wanting to do this for a long
I
time.
know. I know.
And COVID hit, and we had to stop the project, obviously, because our Canadian
Mhm.
government wouldn't let us out of the country. We were kind of prisoners for a while.
Mhm.
But you know, when we looked at the U.S., exporting product from Canada to the U.S. is possible, but in the raw industry, there's, you know, the risk is very high, because the CFIA, which is the Canadian equivalent to the FDA, you know, has restrictions on raw meat to ship into
Mhm.
Canada, and then the FDA, you know, is very wary of obviously salmonella with raw foods in the U.S.,
Right.
and they test that a lot. So when we looked at the risks involved for the company and for the consumers, we didn't want the product to travel far.
Mhm.
So for us to manufacture it like on site in the U.S. is great, and California has some of the best
Yes.
meats and vegetables and fruits that I have ever seen in my career.
Yeah.
A lot of great stuff in California. So for us, it was a no-brainer, to build, you know, the Bold USA business in California instead of shipping it across the border.
Yeah. Well, and just the ability to ship meat when Karen and I, Dr. Becker, did the Canadian raw food testing project, our original thought was we would just order it and have it shipped to directly to our lab.
Yeah,
And of
good luck
course,
with that.
yeah, you can't do
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
you might get lucky and it might get there, or it might sit, inside defrosting for 30 days until the stench drove them out. Um,
Right.
so yeah, shipping to Canada both ways is a challenge at times. So what about the challenge of meeting, US requirements compared to not having that kind of stuff in Canada? Was it
Oh,
hard?
was it ever a learning curve? Oh my goodness. You know, I mean, obviously when you move into such an important market and such a large market, I mean, the US, you guys are just a whole different ballgame. And we had done a lot of research. We hired consultants. We worked
Mhm.
with vet nutritionists to make sure that, you know, the product would meet the standards,
Right.
I mean, claims in the US are so, um, regulated. In Canada, anybody can say anything, and you
Mhm.
know, you don't really have to prove it. And sometimes, you know, that bites you in the butt, let's say. I mean, with us, with our Mega Dog and our Select in Canada, we don't do that in the US just yet,
Mhm.
but we've never put claims on our packaging. And unfortunately, that's hurt us because
Yeah.
there's other vendors that do put claims that
Oh,
I'm
do
not
they
sure
put
can back
claims?
up. Maybe they could, but I don't know if they could or not.
Yeah.
But in the US, we were very diligent about whatever's going on the packaging. I have to have the backup documentation to
Mhm.
be able to prove it.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time developing the formula, making sure that we were, you know, saying what was true, because we wanted specific things, like we wanted it to be GAP certified for, you know, the humanely raised. We don't
Mhm.
really have that in Canada. There's no GAP in
Yeah.
Canada. So I loved finding all of those really amazing farmers that were doing such a great job, because we're all in this because we love animals. We're not,
Yeah.
you know, we don't want animals to be not treated properly. It's terrible. Now in Canada, we have really good humane regulations. If you get
Mhm.
caught abusing an animal, like if a farmer gets caught abusing an animal, it's not great for them. You
Yeah.
know, I found in the U.S. you had a very big range of farmers in a sense. You had the ones that just, you know, did the less expensive stuff, and it's just, you know,
Mhm.
the cows are all in a pen and whatever. But
Feedlot
then you
sort
have
of
these
scenario.
amazing ones,
Mhm.
that they grass raise, they do sustainable farming. So we found a great beef farmer that does sustainable farming up in Montana. So they move the herd so that the grounds can come back to life.
Yeah, because all those cows traipsing over them puts a little stress on.
It
And of course,
does.
consuming
Yeah.
the pasture.
And the chicken farming in California.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it's funny in Canada, and people always come to me and they say, "Oh, is your chicken free range?" And my question is always, "What's your definition of free range?" Because in Canada, it can
Mhm.
get to minus 30-degree weather in the winter. So if your free range idea in Canada is that the chickens are outside,
Yeah.
it's not really realistic in our environment. But
No,
in the
you can't
US,
put
it
little
is.
down vests on them.
Yeah. Yeah, we get cute little collars and
Yeah, yeah.
so for us in Canada, free range is obviously cage free in
Mhm.
very large open farms. And some of the farmers actually go the extra step to make sure the chickens have what they need, but the requirements for chickens in Canada are actually quite high. They can't just stick them in cages,
Mhm.
in a room. They do have to have some movement. Well, at least that's the chickens we use in Canada. In the US, where we were able to find actually true free range, where they're living outside, they're eating the bugs, right? Because they need to eat those bugs,
Mhm.
not being treated with any types of hormones, antibiotics,
Sure,
and
sure.
being able to have the backup to it. If I ask a farmer in Canada for a backup, they look at me like I've got two heads, you know,
Yeah,
because it's not the norm up here. People just follow the Canadian rules that are
right.
quite strict. They're quite strict, so that's good. Like we cannot inject hormones in chickens in Ontario, at least. I know the Ontario laws, but
Yeah.
I don't know about the US. Can you put hormones in chickens in the US?
I don't think you can
No,
anymore,
I don't think you can either.
or turkeys for that matter. Hey, I'm seeing a lot of comments from my team, and I
Ah,
see a lot of people watching. Can one of
hi.
you guys who's yes, hi. One of you guys who's not on my team post a comment from one of the Facebook pages or from YouTube for that matter, just so I can see if this is working because tech support and I are on a first name basis.
Ah. Now, is
At
it
one
normal that I'm not seeing your face?
no, you
Because
should
I'm
be
seeing a beautiful landscape with snow and
no. Oh,
oh,
hi, Elliot's Farm and Home.
all right, there we
No, you should be
go.
seeing me.
Yeah,
How about now? I've made myself in the corner below.
I'm only seeing myself, which is very awkward.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's not supposed to
Yeah.
be the case. Um,
Oh, hi, Arkansas. That's nice.
yes, thank
Oh,
you guys.
Naomi, she's on my team. She's my director of communication.
Hey, Naomi.
Thanks for
Um,
jumping in.
yeah. So give us a vote, guys. Do you want us to leave and come back and see if I can actually see you or just go on like this? So thumbs up if you want us to go on, thumbs down if you want us to try to reset. And let's see, remove that. Oh,
Oh,
Diane
hey,
can see
both of
both
you,
of
so it's
us.
just me. I don't need to see you. It's fine.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
As
that's
long as
good.
you
As long
guys
as they
can
can
see
see both
both
of
of
us
us.
and they're not just looking at my face, that's good.
Okay.
Hi,
All right. We'll
Florida. Hi,
carry on,
Jacqueline.
and then my new friends Anton and Sophia will solve my problems.
Right.
Um, yes. So it sounds like the sourcing in California is just top notch and easy.
Yeah. And
And
finding a place to manufacture our brand was really, really difficult because I'm a little bit of a control freak. As you said at the beginning, my background is medical lab for humans, though not for
mhm,
dogs, but it's the same thing. Like, you know, the sodium in your blood is this. We test it the same way. It's just the values are different whether you're a
mhm,
human or a dog or a cat.
right, right,
So the biology is the same. So for us, when we were looking for a manufacturing plant, it was really difficult because I didn't want a co-packer. I didn't want to just have somebody make my food while I sit in Canada and
right.
hope that they're doing a good job. So we looked at a bunch of different locations, and we found someone in California that was willing to work with us. And so we don't own the plant. We never claim we own the plant,
Hmm.
but we are partners and we are on the line and we do run our own line and our own processes
Yeah. So
because
you're
we've
on
been
site.
sorry?
You're on site when
We are
production
always on
happens.
site. Yes,
Love
our
that.
food is so. My husband Dave is our is our chief operating officer and our VP of operations. We've been doing this together. Oh my God, since 2007 now. So he came in full time in 2011,
Hmm.
and I'm going to tell you, there was a lot of there was a lot of tough days because we grew this company from our home and
Yeah.
we worked hard and sacrificed pretty much everything to get where we are today. We didn't do this for the money. We did this because we love our animals and we wanted to bring a better food to the table. And we were breeding Shiloh shepherds at the time.
Hmm.
So if I put my name on a food, I don't want to wonder if something went sideways because a co-packer did something, and
Right.
maybe I have trust issues. I don't know, but I just like
Well,
to control the
yeah.
manufacturing
Just
process.
to speak to how important what you're saying is, I worked with another company that
Mhm.
used a co-packer,
Right,
and they kind of did spot checks and they did spot testing. And when I said, "Well, did you look at this? And when's the last time you were there? And have you asked this question?" They found out a lot of things the co-packer was doing that they weren't okay with.
right,
And,
and yeah, it's
maybe it
crazy.
wasn't communicated correctly,
Mhm.
who knows, but it affected their product and it actually, made their label claims untrue, what was really happening behind the scenes.
Wow. And that is
Yeah.
my fear. And I mean, look, there's some amazing co-packers out there. I'm not saying they're all shady or anything like that. I just, as a new player coming in the market, and it's my name on
Mhm.
the box, it's
Right.
my reputation on the line. And I've worked pretty hard to build my reputation in Canada. So I didn't want to risk that. It's, we have been manufacturing in Canada for almost 20 years now. It's gonna
Mhm.
be, yeah, almost 20 years. I mean,
Yeah.
um, it's crazy, and we have learned the lessons that you need to learn, and we know, you know, how long you have to mix a batch to make sure that it's properly, just like, how do you say it? I'm French sometimes, guys, so I apologize. Sometimes I'll say weird words, but homogenized, that the like, it's
I
mixed
guess I would
properly.
say that it's homogeneous that no.
Homogeneous, that's a new one.
Well, same homogenized is the act of blending.
Oh, right, and it's consistent from batch
Consistent.
to batch to batch to
Yes.
batch. So when you're manufacturing raw food, and we've learned this, if you're and every texture is different, right? So for
Mhm.
ours, it may be a certain amount of time that you mix it for, but when we walked into the plant and we said this is what we want to do, they were only mixing the batch for 6 minutes. And that's not
Right.
enough to get everything. So we've actually fixed that with them and showed them, the lessons that we've learned.
Yeah.
It's just little the quirks of manufacturing raw food
Yeah.
are really important. So we've learned our lessons and we know what works, what doesn't. We know how to keep food safe. So my background in medical lab has been super. I never thought I'd use my degree when I got into pet food. It's
Yeah.
kind of funny.
But yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that
Yeah,
because to be successful in the medical lab, you've gotta be very detail oriented, very specific. It has to be done. Here's the protocol.
right,
And I think the raw feeding community, especially like when I think of DIY people, they're a little more freestyle.
right.
And you can go freestyle to some degree, and we're going to kind of talk about this when we dive into rotational feeding. But for what you're putting out, you have
Mhm.
to have consistency from, your package to
Right.
package, lot to lot, everything.
It
Um,
always has to be because the consumer today, in my opinion, is very different than the consumer 10 years ago. They're much more educated, they're more knowledgeable, and they have higher standards.
mhm.
Back in the day, I could, and so I see Amber's on here. Amber is my marketing manager, and she started with me when she was barely 18, like
Wow.
15 years ago. She used to grind the meat with us. It was me, Dave, and Amber in our little 1,500 square foot, manufacturing plant in Erin, Ontario.
Mhm.
And, we would grind the meat and bag it and all that. And Back in the day, it's raw meat. It's my dog. Now
Yeah.
it's not the same. If there's a change in color in your patty, which happens because we're dealing with real food. So if your patty is a little lighter and pink than it was the last time, we hear about it. And
Yes.
that's the tough stuff because
Well,
we cannot control real food, right?
yeah. But
We can't tell the
I
chicken,
think,
"Can you please be a little darker next time I
yeah,
process you?" Doesn't work.
yeah,
So
it's what we're working with.
it's a different market.
But I think all the problems in the US, where whether it's with kibble, canned, or raw, that
Right,
the consumer notices a change and all of a sudden dogs are getting sick. So
right.
they're hyper vigilant, and in a
Yeah.
way that's good, even though it's a pain in the butt for
Mhm.
the brand. I'm going to jump a quick question
Yes.
because I know it's going to come up. Erin wants to know, can she get your food in Arkansas?
You sure can, Aaron.
Who are
Absolutely.
you distributing with?
So, okay, this is a new one for the US market. We self-distribute in the southern states.
Okay.
So, in 30, we use pet food experts for California, Pacific Northwest, all the way across to the New England East Coast. But pet food experts doesn't cover the southern states. So we've set up a distribution center in Texas that can distribute pretty much anywhere in North America. Because
Wow.
honestly, guys, I don't know, distributors, I love them. They're amazing. They're our partners. But I also like to, again, I have control issues. I told you this.
Mhm.
I like to control my product. So if something were to happen, I have to have a backup plan because I can't
Yeah.
ship it out of Canada, right? So we have a warehouse in California where we manufacture, and we have a warehouse in Texas that is where we hold some inventory. And we're shipping directly to retailers in the lower states. And then in the upper states, we do pet food experts, which they've been doing a great job for us.
Yeah.
So far, we're very happy. It's a new relationship, so we're building it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So if you
have
want the food,
heard
we can get it to you. Yeah.
excellent, excellent. I have heard of some distribution companies, not pet food experts,
Mm.
that were distributing raw here in the United States, and they didn't have refrigerated trucks.
Oh,
And,
that's
I heard
scary.
about this from a consumer
Right.
who was buying in bulk, so she would arrive at the retail point when
Right.
the truck arrived and literally stand there while they offloaded a few 100 pounds for her,
Right.
and it was defrosted, and,
I'd love to
like,
say I'm surprised, but I'm not.
no, and, well, this is where your trust issues are so
Right.
valuable
Yeah.
because that driver doesn't realize, or, another company, and I heard this from someone in the company,
Mhm.
the distributor was shipping the pallets or packages, whatever they were, of raw food in sort of an insulated vessel, like a gigantic cooler,
Yeah.
but it didn't have a top on it.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, of course, again, the food was
Mm.
melting.
Right.
So, I love that in the southern states where this would most be a factor,
Well, I mean, I was in
you got your
Texas when
hands
we were
on it.
setting this up, and I mean, the stuff I've found out and the stuff we always learn. We are not perfect people. We make mistakes. We all
Mhm.
do, but we own them and we fix them. And that's all that matters in this world. If you screw up, just own it and fix it. It's not hard.
Yeah.
It seems pretty straightforward to me, but, um, and we were in Texas and it was 110 degrees. And I'm thinking, this is going to be a challenge. So we better make sure we find somebody that we can trust and rely on. It's just I don't know how they
Hard.
do it, and I've seen. So when we first were looking for distribution, we found we were looking around and we had one distributor basically say that they shipped it in dry ice and they didn't have reefers and all that, and I'm thinking, okay, well maybe that'll work. So we did a test, and the problem is they put the dry ice right in the box. So they had an insulated box with dry ice. They put it right in the box with the packaging. So when the box got to us, the packaging was completely destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
like, okay, well, that's not going to work.
No, that's not good. That's
No.
not good.
So it's all those, like, people think they can distribute raw easily, but they don't understand the quirks of raw. And
Yeah.
so we only partner with distributors that have reefer trucks, that have processes in place, and that are really focusing on the food safety. So in Canada, we use Pan Pacific Pet in the West. They are exceptional. I
Mhm.
just visited their new warehouse. It is outstanding. They installed this giant freezer, and we've done well with them. And then, but some of the Western distributors we said no to because they just couldn't provide us that chain of
Yeah.
custody. We always
Yeah.
look at chain of custody, right?
Yeah.
And
That's
then
what it is.
in the East, we use Freedom Pet Supplies, which everybody knows. Again, they are just outstanding.
Yeah.
And PFX was really great. I've been talking to them for several years because we were planning on doing this sooner. But I visited their warehouses. They're all reefer trucks. Their infrastructure is extremely well organized.
Hmm.
So I have a lot of like I don't have any issues. And I
Yeah.
always tell retailers, listen, if something shows up and it's not perfect, you let us know. I can't fix what I don't know, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. Um, so one other question, and this will be a
yeah,
nice transition into talking about rotational diets. Holly asked about cat food.
right.
Is it on
Oh,
the to-do list?
that's my nemesis.
Isn't
Okay,
it
Holly,
though?
I'm going to tell you what's going on. So in Canada, we have and maybe, you know what, maybe the audience can give me their opinion. I'd be interested in finding out more. So in Canada, we don't do a complete and balanced diet for cat food. We all know our cats are carnivores. They need that really rich meat organ, that high quality stuff. So we do an 80% meat with, so it's 10% meat, bone, sorry, not meat, what am I saying? 10% bone, roughly, depending on the analysis for the calcium phosphorus, and 20% organ meat. We want that really rich organ meat. I've never done a complete imbalance in Canada. In the US, I am currently finalizing our complete imbalance in the US, but I'm really big with no, I don't like synthetics. I don't know.
Hmm.
If we look at the copper thing that just happened, that's coming through now, you know,
Oh, and you only know 10% of it.
right. So people are adding all this copper to their food, all this synthetic to their food.
Hmm.
And now, years later, oh my God, this is hurting dogs.
Yeah.
And that proves my point. Like synthetics are just the wrong way to go. And we'll talk about rotational feeding, but feed variety, feed a lot of different
Yeah.
things and make sure that, your dogs and cats get all sorts of stuff. So my problem with the cat food that I'm trying to formulate right now is I'm having a really hard time making an AFCO without adding like synthetics in it.
Yeah.
So I was able to do it with the dog food. The dog food wasn't bad, but we know with cats, if we put too much powder in the cat food, the cats are not going to eat it.
Yeah.
They're so delicate with their
Yeah.
palates. So in Canada, my cat food is amazing. It's bloody, it's chunky, they love it. The cats go crazy for it. I'm a little afraid to do a non-AFCO in the US. I would, of course, put it on the label.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put out something with synthetics. So I'm at a crossroads.
What nutrients are you having the most problems with getting enough of?
I would have to look at it, but a lot of it is sodium chloride is one.
Hmm.
And so I would have like the bone broth that I use for our dog food is it's a powder. So I've been looking
Okay.
at getting liquid bone broth, but
Yeah.
that poses challenges, right?
Oh, yeah. A lot
Right.
of them.
So for the cat requirements, I would have to put in more bone broth powder, which would affect the palatability of the food. So that's one
Yeah.
of them. And some of the minerals are tough. It's always the minerals, guys. Whenever you
Mhm.
formulate pet food, in my experience, I can hit the vitamins. I can hit the taurine is like easy, super
Oh,
easy.
piece of cake. Yeah.
So like all the omega oils are super easy
Choline
for
can
cat and
sometimes be
dog.
a challenge.
But the minerals are the tough one. That's where you need to add the copper and the zinc and all that. So
Hmm.
I'm having an ethical struggle with it because I would love to be able to just give our Canadian product and say it's not
Supplemental.
great, but here it is, and you get a really great formula that will work. But I know the US is very AFCO centric.
Hmm.
So would retailers buy into this non-AFCO? Because in Canada, until recently, we never did AFCO. We
Right.
only did it once Dr. Becker and Dr. Cogger came in and started
Yeah.
testing our formulas. People panicked. All of a sudden,
Oh, I know. God, that was the time, guys, when we did the Canadian Food Project.
people lost their minds. It was crazy.
Yeah. Oh, and shout out. I don't know if Matt's still here. Matt's on.
Oh,
Um,
Matt, are you there?
I saw his name go by earlier.
Oh, hi. Say hi, Matt. Let's
Yes,
talk
say
about it,
hi,
man.
Matt.
He's a good
Um,
guy. I like Matt.
yeah, and the thing that I appreciated about a lot of the Canadian manufacturers, once their blood pressures dropped, is I think they did realize we weren't fighting them on it.
No.
We just wanted information, and we were very realistic. This is a one sample, or in some cases, a two sample test.
Yeah.
You need, technically speaking, you need to sample many lots, many times to
Right.
really know that, have full confidence in your numbers. But
Absolutely. And I think what people forget, like AFCO was really built for kibble, right? It was
yeah,
put in back in the day, it's very kibble
well, and it
centric.
started with livestock. I mean, initially
Oh,
dog and
really? I
cat.
didn't know that. Oh, I
Yeah.
love,
Well,
yeah,
feed control. Remember, it's cow feed and horse feed,
right.
not dog feed, even though it is.
Yeah, it's totally weird. And a lot, with raw, and I'm sure anyone on here that's formulated any raw and tried to make it AFCO, the moisture content is what will really be a problem because one batch can be 70%, the next batch
Mhm.
can be 72%, 68. Like you can't consistently always have the same moisture. Like
Right.
hopefully you wouldn't kibble because you're pulling the moisture out.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. So when you formulate a raw for AFCO, and I think my lab knowledge went against me because I did so many AFCO tests on this. I spent so much money.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I've got to figure this out. This was like when we were formulating, because the vet nutritionists I was talking to, they wanted it perfect. And I
Yeah.
was explaining to them, I said, well, I'll never get it
Yeah.
to be exactly the same amount batch after batch after batch. Like it's going to be within the guidelines, but if you want it to hit two every single time, it won't
It's
because of
not
the
going to.
moisture, right?
And that, when you're feeding kibble, you can do that.
Right.
But when you're feeding from real individual animals,
Yeah.
and I learned this in some of my copper testing, certain cows will spend half their day at the mineral block if it's available.
Right.
Their body composition will be way high in those. Um, and then it depends on what pasture they were on and if they were in the feedlot alone. So much variation. But that's where, like, the raw feeder or fresh food says variety will solve my problem. I should just feed rotationally, get my 5 proteins in per week or whatever your goal is.
Right.
And then I don't have to worry that I didn't hit 2 every day. One day
Mhm.
I hit 1, one day I hit 3. My average is 2.
There you go. Right. And that's what we're actually working on something behind the scenes. And I've talked to you about this. I can talk a little bit about it. So I don't want to give away the farm here, but
Yeah.
because it's a very exciting project that we're doing. And, we're trying to show that, variety, even if you're not hitting, like if it's not get it, if you don't have supplements in your food, as long as you're feeding a lot of different things. And I'm one
Mhm.
of these crazy brands that doesn't mind when you feed my brand and another brand,
Right.
as long
Right.
as it's a good quality. I don't, I don't mind. I'm like, it's for the animals. Of
Yeah.
course, I want them to feed my brand because I have employees I have to pay every week.
Right. Right.
I do have to like pay people that work
But
for
the
the
real
company.
world is you might be out of stock at the store that they have access to.
Well, they better not because my distributor will hear about it. Trust me. Just ask Amber, the rampage I go on
Yeah.
when my distributors are shorting product. Oh, that
Yeah.
is a pet peeve of mine. But no,
Yeah.
exactly. And you know what? It's like the grocery store. You go in, you eat different things, different brands. There's nothing wrong with mixing it up. And of course, you end up with your favorite brands,
Mhm.
and that's great because at the end of the day, I mean, the animal, if it's thriving on your brand, and not every brand is for every dog or cat,
Right.
it may do well for one dog or cat because they're all different, right? So it's the right thing to do. And I hate the focus on AFCO. I don't
We
dislike
all do.
AFCO. It is what it is, but I hate that
Well,
sometimes it's
and
like, well, it has to be AFCO. It's
well, and people, consumers, veterinarians
right,
don't realize AFCO is a private industry entity. It has no government power, and they
right.
don't typically, well, they don't we use the term AFCO approved, which is totally incorrect. There's no
There's no
AFCO
approval.
stamp that
No.
goes on the bag of food. It's a statement that says this was formulated to meet AFCO guidelines,
Mhm.
or it was shown to meet the requirements of an AFCO feeding trial. And
Right.
if all you guys have been here for any amount of time, you know my rant on AFCO feeding
I
trials.
was gonna say, don't get me started on AFCO feeding
Oh,
trials.
I was bad. I posted in a vet group about, do you actually know what an AFCO feeding trial is?
Yeah.
You can start off with 8 dogs. All you got to do is keep 6 of them alive for 6 months, and they can't lose more than 15% of body weight, but they can be free fed and get fat, and that's okay. And
It's
that's an AFCO feeding trial. I
right.
mean, and for 6 months, I can keep anything alive. I can keep the average college student alive on ramen, noodles, coffee, and beer for 6 months. I mean, it's not gonna be pretty,
Yeah.
but they'll survive, and they'll
And they
probably
won't lose
live.
weight.
They won't lose weight. So
Yep.
there you go.
Yeah.
Um,
It's true. It's true. And I think that's why sometimes because I was working with a vet nutritionist group in the US, and they're like, "Oh, we can do a feeding trial once you're done." And
and
then I'm
that's an
thinking,
easy way to get AFCO approval.
that is an easy way. And it's not I don't know, like, I don't know. I've been doing this for 20 years and I don't think I've killed a dog yet on,
Mhm.
like, right? Like I've been raising Shiloh Shepherds on
Right.
Mega Dog and Select. That is not AFCO. We're rotational diet. And I would get these puppies. We would switch them at 3 weeks old
Mhm.
to raw, and they were like just fat, chunky puppies, like just
Yeah.
super healthy. And I remember my vet would say, "What are you like? They look so good. What are you feeding them?" And they were growing properly. We would add some
Mhm.
goat's milk and some,
Yeah.
cottage cheese, because large breed puppies, we know they need a little bit more calcium, vitamin D, and stuff. And I just had one, pass away at 14 years old for a Shiloh
Mhm.
Shepherd.
That's old.
That's old because they have genetic issues. Like there's nothing. And that's why I started the brand, because I was breeding these giant Shiloh Shepherds.
Mhm.
And I had one that was really struggling. She was losing her fur. She had EPI. It was all genetic stuff. It had nothing to do
Mhm.
with it. Well, I'm sure nutrition didn't help at the time because I was feeding something stupid like Eukanuba. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But
There was a day when Eukanuba was the gold standard. I
this was
fully admit it.
2003. I didn't know what I was doing. I was
Yeah.
new. I was
Yeah.
just, and all of a sudden I had an aha moment, and I'm like, why am I feeding this? I should feed them real food. And we had a local vet here in Erin. This was like 2005 roughly. And she helped me build our first brand, which was Bold Raw. And Bold Raw was a brand with no fruits and vegetables and just beef. Like, so it's meat, like meat, bone, beef tripe. So a big inclusion of beef
Mhm.
tripe. And then, of course, kelp and organ meats. And she told me what to do essentially. And I did
Yeah.
that for this one dog, and it changed her life completely. She only lived
Yeah.
till 9 because she had so many underlying issues. But
But there were some good years there.
she was comfortable again. She
Yeah.
wasn't itchy. She was happy. You could tell she was just a happy dog. I mean, she looked.
Mhm.
I used to have to put little jackets on her because she had sebaceous adenitis, which is
Yep.
a
Nasty.
poodle disease. I don't even know how the shepherd got it. Like, it's
Yeah.
so weird. So her skin healed. So the oils in her skin came back, and she was really happy. Her name was Lola, and that was my aha moment as a raw feeder and as a natural food feeder. And I quit my job and said, you know what, I got to get this out there. And
Mhm.
back in the day in Canada, there was nobody doing this. So we
Yeah.
we got in at the right time. We hit the wave, and luckily, I mean, Dave and I are, we do this because we love the animals. My husband Dave, and
Mhm.
Amber's been with me 15 years. She does it. I mean, she has so many dogs. I told her she has to stop getting some. No more dogs, Amber.
Yeah. Time to
She does a lot of work with them and stuff. So
thin the
yeah,
pack.
right. She's
Um,
got a good pack.
she's got a
Uh,
good pack. Stay there.
hey,
But yeah, that is interesting, and it's funny you mentioned tripe because a lot of brands do not include tripe.
well,
And
the
tripe
problem you have in
offers
the US, if I may say, is because your FDA is so critical of bacteria.
yeah.
Tripe is actually quite
And when we say
dirty.
tripe, we're talking green tripe,
Yeah,
not
the green tribe.
not the
Yeah,
bleached and washed stuff you
the
might
yucky,
see.
stinky, smelly, right out of the cow. So what we do in Canada, and we can't do this in the US, unfortunately, but in Canada we go right to the certified farm. So this is This is a provincially and federally certified farm, so it's human grade
Mhm.
tripe in terms of it's coming from cows for human consumption. And we get it right. Like, I hate to say this, but
At
it's like
slaughter.
it's out of the cow into our truck and off it
Yeah.
goes. You know,
Yeah, because
so
they probably can't bring it into the human food processing, I'll say
no,
rooms.
it has to be segregated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you're on the slaughterhouse side and
yeah.
you get it and off you go to chop it up.
Right. And because it's the stomach where, well, I mean, maybe you can explain this because I'm not as well versed in cows as you are. There's more like the bacteria starts
Yeah,
in
all
yeah,
the cow's stomach, the four-chambered stomach, and technically speaking, tripe would be just from one chamber, the
yes.
reticulum, but I'm sure, parts of other chambers find their way in there, and that's not the end of the world when we're
No.
talking
And
about our
look, we
dogs.
test all of our food before it goes out. We do test it for E. coli, salmonella, all of
Yeah,
that.
but,
And
the cow digests largely
yeah,
by fermentation. So
right,
that whole big, I'll say stomach, but I mean all 4 chambers, is a big fermentation vat of the plant fibers that the cow has ingested. And when they harvest green tripe, we don't wash all that off. We let whatever sticks to
Mhm.
it stick to it. So we've got the stomach tissue itself. We've got the plant fibers that are on there that are loaded with bacteria. And it's just, a microbiological heaven that's so reinforcing for the microbiome. And, some unique nutrients in there.
Right.
Most people don't realize tripe can be very rich in calcium,
It
which
is.
is which is a huge plus if you're trying to produce a diet where you don't have to use a lot of ground bone, if you're
Mhm.
doing a grind.
Right. And it's very also oily. So it has a lot of omega. Like when you get the tripe, it's really it's not greasy, but you can tell that it's oily.
Mhm.
So it's very hard to it's very difficult to process if you don't know what you're doing. I won't tell you our secrets, but we figured out a way to preserve the oils so that and make sure that it's not too rubbery without processing
It
it.
can be really
It
rubbery.
is. It is. It's hard to. I remember. So Dave and I always tell a story when we were first starting to make this for our dog Lola. We bought this little grinder, and we did it. We did it in our garage, and it was just for our dogs at the time. And we got this. Dave goes to the farm, and he comes back with a truck full of tripe.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, okay, what are we doing with this, right? And he says, "Well, we're going to grind it." And I look at this little tiny grinder that was like, it just, it was so small. And we started doing it, and it just was not grinding because it was so rubbery. And he was trying to stomp it. And we ended up with like 50 pounds, like more than that, I think. The truck was full of tripe. I don't even
Yeah.
remember how much we had. So we ended up bagging the tripe, throwing it in the freezer because we couldn't grind it. And we're
Yeah.
thinking, well, this is not going to work.
A friend and I got a deal on tripe, and we got about 50 pounds at, like, 50 cents a pound, and it was
Yeah.
just in a box. And we didn't have a grinder at that point, we had knives. And I'm like, "Oh, I have a postmortem knife meant to cut up cows." It
Right.
it wouldn't put a dent. She got out her machete
Oh,
and whop, nothing, nothing.
yeah.
We could not cut it with anything. It was like, we practically need a saw for this.
Yeah. There's a way to do it. I'm not gonna reveal our secrets, but we figured out a way to do it to
It's
cut it
not easy.
without. Yeah,
It's
it's
just not.
it was a real big challenge, but we saw such an amazing improvement, excuse
Mhm.
me, on our dogs. And when my females were close to whelping, they wouldn't eat anything. And
But they
and
would
for
eat
like a
tripe.
week, which is a long time in my opinion, but I'm sure there's different thoughts out there. But they would
Mhm.
eat the tripe. So all they did is eat tripe the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they
yeah,
loved it, and,
fine.
it worked out. And but in the US, if it's a big risk to do tripe because I think, there's a couple of companies in the South that do it, but they're always getting recalls because
Mhm.
you guys have a zero tolerance in the US, but a little bit of bacteria is not gonna hurt anybody. It's when there's a
Right.
lot of bacteria. So it's a
Yeah.
very different world. So I'm I'm not comfortable doing tripe in the US for the liability, but I wish I could do it for the dogs because they would
Yeah,
love it, you know?
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I love it and luckily have a local source that packages it just as tripe.
Right.
Excuse me, guys.
I
So
know we're
that
all coughing.
the
We're
dog
all like, I'm getting over a cold. I'm feeling better, but I feel like,
yeah,
yeah,
the dogs do love it, and
right.
and I love that it's feeding something that really supports the microbiome
It does. And if
because
you're
the
in Canada and you
microbiome
can get
needs
our
fiber.
select, that is the best thing I've ever made.
Yeah.
I stand by that food and I will always stand by that food, you know, but it's more
Mhm.
expensive. So it's not as,
Well, but so since you brought that up, speaking to the expense of
mm,
both the finished product and the raw materials, it seems to me like you're really seeking out the quality of ingredients
right.
that if money were no object, all of us would choose. Are
100%.
there are there ways to make it a little less expensive to the consumer without shortchanging too much, in your opinion?
I think, well, I know there is because we've done it in Canada. The problem when you're going with an AFCO complete and balanced
Yeah.
diet is, you've got to put in more ingredients. So, there's more costs. There's more there's more regulations and controls in place, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
We do that already, so for us it wasn't a big deal. But it's funny because we were able to launch in the US with a really affordable product that is AFCO complete. And
Mhm.
we had a lot of people ask us, like, how are you doing this? All the other brands are so expensive. Well, it's easy. I have a very successful company in Canada. I can do a more affordable product and take a lesser margin as a company.
Mhm.
I can still make my money. I can still pay our people well, because it's important to pay your people well, guys. We
Pay 'em
can't
and treat
take it
'em.
out
Yeah.
on our labor. You want people that have been with you for a long time and that are, I always say, that have drank the Kool-Aid and want to be part of this crazy world that we created. Because if you look at Bold in Canada, we don't have huge turnover. I
Mhm.
have people in my plant that have been with me for 5 years, and those people are the ones you want because they know the processes, they know the procedures, they know how important it is to make a quality product. So that's how we did it in the US. So that's how we're able to offer a better
Yeah.
price in the US, is
Yeah.
because the company's actually taking less margin. And I know
Yeah.
that's super unpopular, and people may not believe us, but it is true. So
Yeah.
it's still more expensive than the Canadian product, though, because it is a very, like, when you put claims like GAP certified,
Mhm.
no antibiotics, no hormones, organic, and stuff like that, you're paying for a higher quality of product.
Mhm.
And the quality of the meat and the food really affects the AFCO results that you get. It really does. And I've seen
Yeah.
this because I've been doing a project in Canada with some of our Bold and Select, like Bold, Mega Dog, and Select, that's not available in the US. And it's very interesting to see some of the differences come through depending what the formula is. And, like in the US, our meat is, it's certified. In
Mhm.
Canada, the meat is certified as well. It's human grade. I'm not saying it isn't. But in the US, I use, chicken breast for our chicken.
Mhm.
I can't do that in the mega because the chicken breast is so expensive. I'd be priced more than primal, at
Yeah.
this point in Canada.
Yeah.
So we use the offcut, like not the offcuts, but the trim, right?
Sure.
The trim, and also we all use this mechanically separated meat. I don't care what the companies say in Canada. We all use that in
Yeah.
Canada. With my
Yeah.
complete line, I don't use mechanically, you call it debone, mechanically deboned meat in the US.
Yeah.
Well, in Canada, we call it mechanically separated. So for the mega line, the way we keep it affordable is it's still human grade. You
Mhm.
guys all eat MSM, if you like MDM, if you eat, like, different chicken products and stuff. So it's all good, but it's just a different
Yeah.
type of meat. So when I
Yeah.
test my mega dog with MSM, I get a very different result than when I test my complete
Mhm.
with the chicken breasts and the chicken leg meat that I
Yeah.
use in that.
Yeah. Different protein, different
Right.
amino acid profiles, different
That's
level of fat.
right.
But the mechanically separated or MSM meats, you can hop on YouTube and see a video of how that's
Right.
done. But a lot of times they're scraping every fiber of meat off the bones.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you're gaining the coating of the bones, the periosteum, which can have nutrients that are supportive of joint health. So
Right.
there is some benefit to it. I used to
Yeah,
be
it's not
able
bad. It's
no,
it's not a bad thing. I certainly, and
McDonald's
that's why I
uses it
don't
every
hide it.
day.
It's like, no, this is what we do. This is who we are.
Yes.
But that's interesting that you said that because it was kind of cool to see the differences in the lab results coming
Mhm.
back to us
Well, and
between the two
Steve
different bases.
Brown, will often say, the simple thing of if you're looking at a DIY recipe, if it
Mhm.
doesn't specify what level of fat is in the meat, don't go there
Yeah,
because it's not going to be if you make it with, let's say, 73% lean beef compared to 90% lean beef, you're going to have two very different recipes and you
right.
won't know it unless you actually look at the
And
numbers.
that's why I hate ratios. Oh my God,
Mhm.
I'm telling you all the stuff I hate today. I
That's
hate it
okay.
when raw food companies put ratios on their boxes because it's like, no, you should build your formula according to the lab results, not according to what a vet said 20 years ago is what the ratio should be.
Yeah,
Like,
we have learned so much in the raw food
I know. And
industry.
we get that. I never put the ratios on our boxes. And Amber's probably cursing me right now because she keeps asking me, to do that. And I'm like, but it's not right. Like, we're just saying that so that we're like everybody else. We're not like,
No, you wanna stand
my
out.
bone might be 11% on one and might be 9% on the other. But what we do is we send it to AFCO and we back it up
Yeah,
with a lab result. So it's really tough. Like we're at a different crossroad right now with raw. It's an evolution and I'm really excited about it. I love this stuff. I love the
yeah.
knowledge and figuring it out. And there was a question there from Janet.
Oh, I was gonna go to that. Let's do
Right.
that
Yeah. No, I was just kind of looking on the side. That's a great
because
question, Janet.
yeah,
Yeah.
great question, and we have I guess you would call them. They're not selling it out of their truck, but farmer types, and
Yeah.
they'll sell a beef grind, and they'll say it's 80-10-10. Whether it is or not, I do not know,
Right.
but it'll be $2 or less a pound for beef
Right.
organs, and bone. Now, to grind beef bone, you basically need a tank.
Ha.
So, I
Yeah.
would wager that the bones are probably poultry. I have a
Or
home
bone dust from the
or
beef
bone dust.
carvings. Yeah.
But if it's bone dust, then call it bone dust, don't call it bone.
Right.
Um, but do you have a rule of thumb? How do you feel, $2 US a pound
Right.
for a beef meat grind?
$2 US a pound. That's actually not that bad. I'm converting Canadian in my head here. And
Yeah,
we also use kilos. So I'm like doing a
right.
double conversion. But I mean, that's pretty cheap for beef because if you
It's
look
pretty
at,
cheap.
yeah,
Um,
if you look at what you pay in the grocery store,
yeah. Sometimes we can get 80-20
yeah,
ground beef at 2.99 a pound in the grocery store. Now that is feedlot beef, that is not free range.
right.
But it is
I
good
think as long
quality.
as you know what you're getting and you know that it's the truth, then
Yeah,
you can make decisions for your family and your dogs and your cats, right? I think at the end of the day, that's what it is. I mean, you know, I I've always been of the thought of some raw is better than no raw.
right.
And remember back in the day when they said, if you mix kibble and raw, your
Oh
dog is
god, yeah.
going to die.
You were going straight to hell.
Oh yeah, it was the end of the world, and
It
it's
was.
evolved now, and it's people are mixing. I don't know if they're mixing directly, but they're feeding a combination of things.
Yeah,
And right
whatever
now we're in
method
a
you choose.
period of time where inflation is bad, and some people went back to like kibble if there's some high quality kibbles that they feel comfortable with,
Yeah.
and they still feed raw, but they've been able to. I tell people, listen, maybe feed kibble 2 days a week and feed raw
Yeah.
the rest, or
The world is gray in my view. Do the best
oh,
you
I live
can.
in the gray.
Yeah, we live in the gray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just you have to do what's right for you. So, definitely if you can find a base formula that you trust, and this is what we do in Canada. We have some base formulas where people can just make their own or at
Mhm.
least have some raw in their diet. So if you have that and then you can add, and you work with somebody like Dr. Cogger that can help you put something together, then you're in good shape,
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so somebody said currently any kibble that is safe is $5 a pound. That's interesting because our raw in the US is averaging between $5.50 to $7 a pound. So
Mhm.
we're in line with the kibble, which is actually
Yeah.
good for raw,
Well,
right?
and, we have
Yeah.
various things happening in the kibble world. Well,
Well,
and I
yeah, we
shouldn't
have
say in the US. It is not just the kibble world, it's the canned world, it's the
it's
freeze-dried
everything.
world. There's all sorts of stuff going
Yeah.
on. But I do believe variety is your friend,
Variety
and
is yeah, and that's
as
why
many.
we're one of the few that do variety boxes.
Oh,
So,
yeah, that's nice.
yeah, you have everything in there. You just have to buy a box and everything's it's all labeled and stuff, but you can feed chicken one day or pork the
Yeah.
next, turkey the next. So the variety boxes are really great. So in Canada, we have quite a few of those. In the US right now, we only have one style,
Mhm.
but we're going to be expanding that line down the road.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
excellent because
Yeah,
that
so we're
just makes
excited
it
about that.
easier.
So, yeah, it's there's just so much opportunity and just I have to watch because I want to do so many things, but then
Mhm.
I can't do it all at once either.
Right, right. Yeah, you have to go in steps and everything takes longer than you think.
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
Absolutely.
if you're gonna do it yourself, just make sure that you get all the information because that's how I started too. When I started with my dogs, I did it myself, but I went out and talked to my local vet who was a very big, like she used to raise Great Pyrenees, and
Mhm.
she basically told me how she did it, and it made sense to me, and I looked it up. I did research. We all do that, and just make
Yeah.
sure you do your research and don't just think that because they say it is, right? Especially the
Especially
butchers. The butchers
especially
are
with
yeah,
butchers, yeah. And, there are local butchers who will do meat and organ grinds or just organ grinds.
yeah,
And, they're fine for supplemental, but you never know. And if you're
right?
feeding that in combination with synthetics, I mean, anytime you're feeding beef liver, especially feedlot beef liver,
Yeah,
if there's supplemental copper in whatever else you're feeding, don't feed the beef liver
mhm,
because we know feedlot beef liver is so much higher in copper than the nutritional data available for most formulators realizes. Um,
right,
I've tested beef liver from the grocery store that topped 1,000 parts per million of copper, and
yikes,
my grass-fed cows were in the 70s. So that's a huge range.
yeah,
Um, and I think
and
the prey model advocates are like, "Oh, no, you gotta have 10% organ meat," so they'll feed 5% liver and 5% something else.
yeah,
So I love
not
that you
not
don't put
ingredients are not
fertility
all
in.
equal, just like raw, it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's scary too because you're like, you wanna do the right thing, and then you find out these things. Every raw company that adds copper in their raw, they're doing it because a professional has told them to do this.
Yes. Yes.
And my thing is, if a professional tells me to do something, I have a tendency not to just take their word. I actually go out and do my own research, and then if it
Right.
makes sense, and
Yeah.
I have more than one voice that is a professional is telling me that, then I'm like, okay, well, they know more than me. I'm going to do that. But if it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Well,
it's a strange
a
world,
strange
and
world, and,
yeah,
there aren't that many credentialed, I'll say, truly credentialed, so
yeah,
that means to me you're either a vet who's become a specialist or a PhD
right,
that are out there formulating, and I got kicked to the curb by a cooked food company because I looked at their formula, I'm like, "Whoever formulated this is used to formulating kibble, they put a standard vitamin mineral premix,
right,
and you don't need to do that."
right.
And I'm sure that professional I told them I was all wet, and the relationship kinda
That
ended
woman
there.
is full of crap.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we who do formulate using whatever software, my choice is always ADF, Animal
Yeah,
Diet
I use
Formula.
ADF as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I call up Steve Brown if I need help, or I
right.
call up Susan Recker. Steve will not be at the expo this year, but Susan will.
Oh, great. No, I'm
Doing
excited about the expo.
Yeah,
It's my
doing
first
the
year. I
VIP
could
se
never go before because I didn't have a product in the US. Well, I could have gone, but I
yeah,
couldn't participate as a company,
yeah.
right? But now that I have the product in the US,
Yeah.
it
Well,
was
and I know
exciting for us to sponsor it.
you're gonna be
Yeah.
crashing the ADF workshop
I,
where
I'm I'm gonna be stalking them. Not
you
kidding.
bet. Yeah, Doctor Royal and Doctor Recker will be sitting there. Be sure if you're in the VIP program, you've brought your laptop. I have to talk with them about how we're going to put everybody on the ADF plan for a bit so
Yeah.
that you can sit there and formulate and have somebody look over your shoulder and say, try this and do that. And that looks great.
Right.
A personal coach.
Yeah. And it's funny because even with the animal diet formulator or any formulators,
Mhm.
it's a guideline. Like you put in, like you said, the grass-fed beef liver is very different than the lot
Right.
feed liver. But in Canada, we don't have that feedlot grass-fed stuff. It's a lot
Mhm.
of independent farms.
Right.
So, if I have 10 farms supplying a processor, they're all grass fed. And of course, we're in the winter, right? We got
Yeah.
winter. So they're not eating that beautiful
Right.
grass all year round. So the values are going to be different. So when I put, the beef liver grass fed or into my formulator, that is a guideline in my mind until I can validate it with an AFCO
With
test.
testing.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, the thing I like about ADF is if you punch in beef liver, you'll have about 10 or 12 different data sets
You
to
do.
choose from. So
Right.
I know there's like Arizona beef's values. I know my farm values are in there.
Yeah.
So you could say, oh, I got this much liver from this source, and I think that number set is the best, and get a closer approximation.
Right.
But it is always an approximation.
It is. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is when you guys did your Canadian pet food testing years ago, I don't know how long, what was that, 2017?
It was in the beginning of COVID
Oh, okay, 2019. Wow, I
because
lose track of time.
the
After
story.
that, everybody kind of jumped and went AFCO and put synthetics in their food. What I did though is I took all of my ingredients one at a time and I sent it to the lab to get the
Mhm.
mineral content of it.
Yeah.
So I tested the beef liver I was using to see the mineral content because I didn't want to just throw a bunch of synthetics in there, and
No, there's no
I've
reason.
gotten a lot of flack for that, and even when they did the pet food review, there was comments that, I'm the only company that hasn't like really gone AFCO fully in Canada, and
Mhm.
one of the reasons is because I don't want to do something unless it's perfect, maybe. I don't know. I want it to be true
Yeah.
to us. And adding synthetics would have been easy. I could have just thrown a ton of stuff in my Mega Dog.
I said, "I'm making the grade." Yeah.
There you go. I'm
Right.
like everybody else. So instead, what I did is I took my time. I knew my brand was fine. I mean,
Mhm.
we do over 1 million pounds, of product a month, if not more. I don't know my
Yeah.
exact numbers, but it's good. It's fine. But I wanted to make a complete and balanced that was really different and was really unique, and that's what we did in the U.S. So
Yeah.
our U.S. brand, the Complete and the Bold by Nature Complete, is actually going to be brought into Canada to be sold in Canada
Oh, nice.
because I'm going to have the options. You can have your rotational
Mhm.
diet with the Mega and Select. You can have the Complete and Balance if you're just going to feed, chicken or whatever.
Right.
But still, I still want people to feed everything, not just the
Yeah.
one the
Yeah.
one type, right? So we got there. It just took us a little longer.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, I see I've kept you over your hour time slot.
Oh, that's
So
okay. If people have questions, I can
yeah,
always.
we'll take a couple
I've got
last
some time. Yep, it's
ditch
up to you.
questions, and then so now's your chance, guys. Oh, Janet asks, "Are you doing any direct shipment?" Well, let me show you.
Nope.
Not do
Are
you do
any of the
direct
supplement
shipment
formula
on
products
non
available for direct shipment to consumers? Janet, are you in the US or Canada? Can you quickly say? Because it's a bit different.
She's in upstate New York, north of
Ah,
me.
okay. So our supplement line is not currently available in the US. But good news, we are working to manufacture those in the US and make them available to the US. So, when that happens in Canada, we do ship that direct to the consumer if they want
Mhm.
to do e-commerce. And we're, planning to do the same in the US just for the supplements though. The one thing that we've stayed really true to is the loyalty to the retailers, because when you're feeding raw, you need that person that's going to help you if you
Mhm.
don't know how to do it, right? So we have to be very careful. I don't want to override these amazing independent retailers that have, you know, so much knowledge and information for the consumers. So we work very closely with them. Now, if there's an area where, they can't get the raw and we can get it to them directly, we'll try to make it work. But supplements are different. Supplements, there's just so many out there. The retailers, don't really care that we, we sometimes do some e-commerce with that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's yeah, because let's say, for example, hypothetical, we're talking about a joint support product.
right.
There's so many on the pet store shelf, on the online,
How
at
do
the vet's
people
office,
know what
everybody.
to buy?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you're
Um,
welcome, Holly. Yeah, it's just there's just so much noise out there, and
yeah.
at the end of the day, I mean, I've got to be able to sleep at night, so
Yeah,
that's
without a
that's what
doubt.
drives me, I tell you.
Oh, completely.
Yeah,
Well, I can't wait for you to make the trip down. We are gonna have such an amazing weekend.
I'm so excited.
So guys, if you don't have your tickets yet, there is still the President's Week special where you have a great price on the ticket and 25 free raffle basket tickets for our amazing gift basket raffle.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'll be there. So if you have if you look us up and you want to ask some questions, I'm the one that's supposed to know all the answers. So Lisa Russo said she has a question above. She's in Canada. I haven't seen that yet.
yeah,
Sorry, Lisa. Let me look
we can
for it.
only scroll back so far.
There you are. Have you thought of offering a feline senior option that has less bone and uses eggshell for calcium for cats with kidney disease? Oh, Lisa. Oh my God. I used to do that years ago, and I was shunned by the raw community that, you know, I should not use. Like, we used to do a 50-50 of for dogs and cats that had beef tripe and meat with a lower content of bone, and we ended up canceling that line
Mhm.
because of just it wasn't evolved yet. It just wasn't ready for it. So we have done it. I haven't done it since. I hesitate with eggshells for a couple of things. You know, it's you got to make sure your supplier and your sourcing is good. So I don't want to get sometimes you can buy like powdered eggshell from a supplement supplier, and I don't like the chain of custody on that one. So I have looked into eggshells, and I have a relationship with someone that um, I trust that I'm kind of looking into, but you never know. I mean, it has to make sense, and I would love to do it with. I would love to do like senior and puppy and all of that fun stuff,
Mhm.
but it has to be without crazy supplements,
Yeah.
and something that people are gonna want to buy. Because if I make it and only 5 people buy it, it's probably not something I would
Mhm.
do, even if I believed in it,
Yeah.
because my staff would kill me. Uh, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be
So,
a viable product from the business
yeah.
aspect.
Yeah, lower phosphorus option. And okay, so here's something that maybe you can tell me, Lisa, and maybe Dr. Cogger, is something you can answer. We get these questions all the time. Do you have something with low phosphorus? Well, what is considered low phosphorus?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the
What's
number? And I go back and because vets will tell the customers, you need a low phosphorus diet. And then they come to us. And my first question is, because I handle most of the nutritional questions for the company.
mhm.
So our customer service team, if it's not something obvious, like what is the content of your phosphorus, they will send it to me. And my first question is, well, what is low? What do you want that is
Yeah.
low? And nobody knows how to answer that question for me. So I give them the formula that has the lowest phosphorus.
Right.
But
Well,
what's the
and
number?
yeah, I don't have a number.
Yeah.
Most of the most vets who have a number are basing that number off what a commercial kibble company that is a prescription food, what their numbers are.
Yes.
And you have to remember that's a dry food. It's going to be digested totally differently than a raw food or even than a canned.
Right.
So, in addition to the amount of phosphorus in the individual product, you have to consider the digestibility and availability of it.
Hmm.
And that's going to vary from cat to cat and from food category to food category. Um,
And that's the missing link in our
yeah,
category is the
yeah.
bioavailability and digestibility.
And you know how expensive food testing is. I get people like, "Oh, will you test my homemade diet?" And I'm like, I ask my first question is, "Have you calculated it out?" And of
Yeah.
course they say no
I'll
because they're
send you the
doing
bill for 3 grand.
yeah, and it's like, and then they go into
Yeah.
sticker shock when I say, and I'll call it a complete AFCO trial. It's like a nutrient profile. It's like what, 20 or 30 some nutrients
Right.
Maybe more when you consider all the essential amino acids and everything. It's a lot of
Right.
testing, and figure it's 3 grand a product, and
Right.
you don't even have a consistent recipe. Where is the benefit to you? And then
Right.
they leave in a huff. But
Yeah, there's still a
yeah,
lot of education around that in
a
the
lot of information.
yeah, and when when a lot of the brands are not basically answering the tough questions and not realizing that they're just throwing the
Yeah,
synthetics in. I'm trying to be different and to be more kind of scientific than
right.
what's out there. And there's a lot of great studies that are going to be coming out of the University of Guelph that I'm
Mhm.
following about bioavailability of the real ingredients.
Yeah.
There's one coming out, a PhD, I forget her name, but she's doing bioavailability of amino acids, and she showed in the study, I think it was cysteine, that even if you add 120% more than the AFCO recommendation for cysteine, they were still not hitting the targets
Mhm.
for bioavailability.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting to me because I'm a science person, but
Yeah.
I'm excited about the next couple of years and what's going to come out. I think
Yeah.
we're going to see some really cool stuff.
I think so too. And
Yeah,
Holly, I'll just add those numbers that you cite in your post of 1.5% for seniors or 1%. I
right,
don't know that those numbers are actually accurate, in that who made them up. If you're looking at what Hills, for
right.
example, says, it's going to be different.
Less than
Um,
1.5. Yeah. I
and
mean,
I
yeah,
like to know where you started, what your current feeding plan is, how about, and if we, and again, this is where calculation, even though I'm a veteran raw feeder and I sometimes just throw stuff in the bowl, you got to have an idea of what's going in. And if you do
right.
the calculations and then drop the phosphorus by 25% and see how your cat is or your dog is. I have a dog with kidney disease as we speak. He's eating far more carbs, far less protein. I don't stress over the numbers, but and his blood phosphorus is normal. I haven't done an HTMA on him recently. There are loads of ways you can monitor and fine tune and not have to stick with a strict percentage,
Mhm.
because I don't know that that percentage works for every animal.
Right. They're all different. Every dog is different, and like every person is different. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't digest carbs very well, right? Some people are, gluten free. They can't digest gluten. So it's
yeah,
just I hate the generalization of the dog and cat world in nutrition.
hmm,
I feel like we're past that. We've evolved. Like we know more, and
yeah,
it's a lot of these organizations that are kind of stuck in the past. It's probably because there's a lot. I mean, the US, let's face it, you guys do a lot of lobbying. Like there's a lot of lobbying in
hmm,
the US with these government organization. That's not as it doesn't happen in Canada as much. So if the FDA's make FDA or
yeah.
AFCO or whoever are making a ton of money, I mean, you always kind of wonder, how do they want to evolve, or do they want to evolve?
No,
I
and
don't know.
and
Right?
the average American is much lazier than those who will DIY. They want
Yeah,
to put 2 cups in the bowl and be done with it.
right.
Um, and they've been taught by everybody from the pet food industry to the vets to others that kibble is what you feed,
Absolutely.
maybe with a tablespoon of canned on top for a treat.
Right.
And that becomes ingrained, and they don't think they can. How many times have they been told, "Don't feed table food. Don't feed people food."
Right.
When, people food can be anything from a pizza crust to a chunk of lean chicken breast.
Right.
So,
My
anyway.
dogs get they get all sorts of stuff that we make, and I
Mhm.
just throw it in their bowls, and sometimes they eat it, sometimes they don't. For some reason they don't like mushrooms. I have a dog that'll carry it around as it's their puppy and then drop it in the most inopportune areas.
Undoubtedly.
I'll find a mushroom in my bed going, that was not what it was for, Simone. So yeah, anyways, we could probably talk about this all
We
day.
can talk about this all day, but we'll talk about it more in April. So,
Yeah.
guys,
Well, I'm
don't
coming. Am I doing another one of these? I think
I don't know. Are you going to California?
I'm going to California tomorrow, but I thought we were doing I thought I had another date scheduled with you. I don't know. I don't know what I do half
Oh,
the
I
time.
think we are. We are.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. So we'll
Yeah.
pick it
Oh,
up in
Buffalo, New
part two.
York. You know what, Diane? Go to your local raw feeding store and ask for it because we're getting we can distribute there. It's just we just haven't probably hit that area yet, which is bizarre because it's right across the border. I'll
Yeah,
even come down and talk to them. But
yeah.
please, like if you can tell them about us, that would be great. It's
Yeah,
word of
but
mouth.
Diane, don't drive across the border with raw food.
Don't do
Don't
it
do it.
unless it's very well labeled.
Mhm.
Yep,
Exactly.
and it's
Well,
consumer brand. Yeah,
thank you so much,
you're
and yes,
so welcome. Thanks, guys.
we'll be doing this again. I'll be back tomorrow with the attempt with the folks from Four Legger. We had to abandon ship yesterday because of
Oh,
tech difficulties, and, so we're back tomorrow at 11 AM, so hopefully you guys can join us, and then, you'll see a post with the next round of lives, but basically we'll be coming to you 2 to 3 times a week for the month of March.
wow,
So
you're
thank
a busy
you.
lady. Do you sleep ever?
No,
No,
no.
overrated.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye for now.
Thanks.